It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, a chilling piece of advice that cuts straight to the heart of power. Let's be honest. We all want to be the good guy. The one who's loved, respected, and admired for doing the right thing. But Machiavelli, the Italian philosopher and master of political strategy, has a hard truth for us. Power isn't always for the good guys. In a world full of ambition, betrayal, and competition, being good can sometimes leave you vulnerable. But here's the twist. Machiavelli's dark advice isn't about becoming a villain. It's about helping good people navigate the harsh realities of power without losing their integrity. In this video, we'll explore 5 of Machiavelli's most honest lessons on the art of power, tailored for good people who want to make a difference without getting crushed. I've wrestled with these ideas myself, and I'll share how they've shaped my perspective. Stick around for practical tips you can use to wield power wisely in your own life. Let's dive in. Machiavelli's first lesson is simple, but brutal. Power is a game, and you need to understand its rules to survive. He believed that good intentions alone won't protect you in a world where people are often driven by self-interest. I learned this the hard way early in my career. I was working at a small company, and I thought being a team player, always helping others, never stepping on toes, would earn me respect and a promotion. I'd stay late to help colleagues, share credit for my ideas, and avoid office politics like the plague. But when a leadership role opened up, someone else got it. Someone who wasn't as nice as me, but knew how to play the game. They networked with the right people, highlighted their wins, and weren't afraid to push for what they wanted. I felt betrayed, but I realized I'd been naive. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." Let that sink in. People aren't always fair, and power isn't always given to the most deserving. It's often taken by those who understand how to navigate the system. This doesn't mean you have to be deceitful, but it does mean you need to open your eyes to the reality of power dynamics. The ancient Indian strategist Chanakya, often called the Indian Machiavelli, had a similar view. A person should not be too honest. Straight trees are cut first, and honest people are screwed first. As a good person, you might think honesty and kindness are enough, but Machiavelli and Chanakya remind us that you need to be strategic too. For me, this meant learning to play the game without losing my values. I started paying attention to how decisions were made at work, who had influence, what they valued, and how they operated. I didn't change who I was, but I became more intentional about how I showed up. Here's your first lesson. Understand the game of power. Take a step back and observe the dynamics around you, at work, in your community, or even in your family. Who holds the power? What drives their decisions? How do they maintain their influence? You don't have to play dirty, but you do need to know the rules. If you're at work, start building relationships with key decision makers, not to manipulate, but to understand their priorities. If you're in a social group, notice who people turn to for advice and why. What's one power dynamic you can start observing today? Machiavelli's advice often feels cold, because he prioritized strategy over emotion. He wrote, "A prince must have no other object or thought, nor acquire any other skill than war and its methods." In other words, focus on what works, not what feels good. This was a tough lesson for me to learn. A few years ago, I was leading a small project team at work. I wanted everyone to like me. So I made decisions based on what would make people happy, like giving everyone equal tasks, even if some weren't pulling their weight. I thought it would build trust, but instead, it created resentment. The harder workers felt unappreciated, and the project suffered because I wasn't addressing the real issues. Machiavelli would have told me to be strategic, not sentimental. He believed that leaders and anyone seeking power need to make decisions based on what achieves the goal, not what makes everyone feel good. This doesn't mean you should be heartless, but it does mean you need to prioritize effectiveness over popularity. The English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who also wrote about power in his book Leviathan, had a similar perspective. The condition of man is of war of everyone against everyone. Hobbes saw the world as a competitive place where survival often depends on strategic thinking. As a good person, you might want to avoid conflict, but Machiavelli and Hobbes remind us that sometimes you need to make tough calls to protect your position and achieve your goals. For me, this meant learning to lead with clarity, not just kindness. After that project, I started being more direct with my team. I assigned tasks based on people's strengths, even if it meant some got more responsibility than others. I had honest conversations with those who weren't performing, and I set clear expectations. It wasn't always comfortable, but the team respected me more, and our next project was a success. I realized that being strategic didn't make me a bad person. It made me a better leader. Here's your second lesson. Be strategic, not sentimental. The next time you're faced with a decision, whether at work, in a relationship, or in a group, ask yourself, what's the most effective choice? Even if it's not the most popular. If you're leading a team, don't shy away from giving constructive feedback, even if it feels tough. If you're negotiating, focus on your goal, not on pleasing the other person. What's one decision you can approach more strategically this week? Machiavelli believed that power depends on how others perceive you. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." In other words, appearances matter. If you want to hold power, you need to build a reputation for strength, even if you're a good person at heart. I learned this lesson the hard way during a volunteer project I was part of. I was helping organize a charity event, and I wanted to be the nice guy who got along with everyone. I'd agree to every suggestion, avoid conflict, and let others take the lead, even when I knew their ideas wouldn't work. The event was a mess, poorly planned, underattended, and we barely raised any funds. People started seeing me as someone who couldn't get things done, and I lost their respect. Machiavelli would have told me, don't let your desire to be liked undermine your authority. He believed that a leader, or anyone seeking power, needs to project strength, even if it means being firm or making unpopular decisions. This doesn't mean you have to be cruel, but it does mean you need to show that you're capable and in control. Benjamin Franklin, the American polymath, had a similar insight. Well done is better than well said. Franklin understood that actions speak louder than words, and a reputation for strength comes from delivering results, not just being nice. As a good person, you might worry that being strong makes you seem harsh. But Machiavelli and Franklin remind us that strength and goodness can coexist. You just need to balance them wisely. After that charity event, I decided to change my approach. The next time I volunteered, I took a more active role. I set clear goals, delegated tasks with confidence, and wasn't afraid to say no to ideas that wouldn't work. I still cared about the team, but I focused on getting results. The event was a success. We raised more money than expected, and people started seeing me as a reliable leader. I didn't have to be mean to be strong. I just had to show I could get things done. Here's your third lesson. Build a reputation for strength. Think about how others perceive you in your current role, at work, in your community, or even among friends. Are you seen as someone who can be relied on to deliver? If not, start small. Take on a responsibility and follow through with confidence. If you're at work, lead a small project and show you can handle it. If you're in a social group, organize an event and make sure it goes smoothly. What's one way you can show strength through your actions this week? Machiavelli's advice often feels dark because he didn't shy away from the harsh realities of power. He wrote, "A prince must learn how to be not good, and to use this or not according to necessity." In other words, sometimes you need to be ruthless to protect your position or achieve your goals. This was a tough pill for me to swallow. I've always prided myself on being a good person, someone who avoids conflict, treats others fairly, and never wants to hurt anyone. But there was a moment in my life when I realized that being too good can backfire. A few years ago, I was working on a group project at work with a colleague who was constantly slacking off. He'd miss deadlines, show up unprepared, and leave the rest of us to pick up the pieces. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I kept covering for him, thinking he'd eventually step up. But he didn't. He took advantage of my kindness, and the project suffered. Our boss noticed, and the whole team got a warning. I was furious, but I realized I'd been too soft. If I'd been more ruthless, calling him out early or escalating the issue, I could have protected the team and the project. Machiavelli would have told me, "Don't let your goodness make you weak." He believed that power sometimes requires tough decisions, even if they feel uncomfortable. This doesn't mean you should be cruel, but it does mean you need to know when to put your foot down. The ancient Indian strategist Chanakya, known for his political treatise Arthashastra, had a similar view. The king shall be ever active and discharge his duties. The root of wealth is activity, and of evil its reverse. Being active means taking decisive action, even if it's harsh, to protect what matters. As a good person, you might shy away from ruthlessness, but Machiavelli and Chanakya remind us that sometimes it's necessary to maintain order and achieve your goals. After that experience, I learned to set boundaries. The next time I worked with that colleague, I was clear from the start. We all need to pull our weight, or I'll have to escalate this. I didn't want to be harsh, but I knew I had to protect the team. He stepped up and the project went smoothly. I realized that being ruthless doesn't mean being unkind. It means being firm when it counts. Here's your fourth lesson. Know when to be ruthless. Think about a situation in your life where you've been too soft. Maybe someone's taking advantage of you, or a project suffering because you're avoiding conflict. Set a clear boundary and don't be afraid to enforce it. If you're at work, have an honest conversation with a teammate who's not contributing. If you're in a relationship, address a behavior that's been bothering you. What's one situation where you can be firm this week? Machiavelli's advice might seem dark, but it's not about abandoning your values, it's about using power wisely. He believed that a leader should aim to do good, but they must also protect themselves from those who don't play by the same rules. I learned this lesson through a personal experience a few years ago. I was volunteering for a local nonprofit, and I was passionate about the cause, helping underprivileged kids get access to education. I poured my heart into it, organizing events, raising funds, and advocating for the kids. But I quickly realized that not everyone shared my intentions. Another volunteer started taking credit for my work, using it to gain favor with the board. I was hurt, but I didn't want to stoop to their level. I wanted to stay the good guy. Machiavelli would have told me, use your power for good, but don't be naive. He believed that good people can wield power effectively, but they need to protect themselves from those who might exploit their kindness. This doesn't mean you should stop being good. It means you need to be smart about how you use your influence. Nelson Mandela, the South African leader who fought for justice, understood this balance. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Mandela used his power to fight for equality, but he also knew how to navigate political challenges without compromising his principles. As a good person, you can use power to make a difference, but you need to be prepared for those who might try to undermine you. After that experience with the nonprofit, I learned to protect myself while still doing good. I started documenting my contributions, sharing updates with the board directly, and building alliances with other volunteers who shared my values. I didn't attack the other volunteer, I just made sure my work was recognized. Over time, I gained more influence in the organization, and I was able to do even more for the kids. I realized that power isn't just about doing good, it's about doing good while staying safe. Here's your fifth lesson. Use power for good, but protect yourself. Think about a cause or goal you care about. How can you use your influence to make a difference? At the same time, identify one way you can protect yourself from those who might take advantage of your kindness. If you're at work, document your contributions so you're not overlooked. If you're in a volunteer role, build a network of allies who support your vision. What's one way you can use power for good while staying protected? Let's wrap up with a final thought. Power isn't always for the good guys, but good guys can learn to wield it wisely. We've explored 5 lessons from Machiavelli to help you navigate the art of power. Understand the game. Be strategic, not sentimental. Build a reputation for strength. Know when to be ruthless. And use power for good while protecting yourself. These ideas have helped me find a balance between staying true to my values and thriving in a competitive world. And I hope they do the same for you. Here's my challenge for you. Pick one of these lessons and try it today. Maybe it's observing the power dynamics around you, or making a strategic decision instead of an emotional one. Maybe it's setting a boundary or using your influence to support a cause you care about. Whatever you choose, notice how it feels to approach power with intention. I'd love to hear how it goes. Share your experience in the comments. If this video resonated with you, give it a like and share it with someone who might need a little Machiavellian wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe for more practical life lessons. See you in the next video.